Another interesting note that was brought up here by Paul Levesque. He was asked about sort of, I guess, different changes to their formats and such, and he was talking about the creation of new stars. And he said, as we create more and more stars, it sort of creates this opportunity for stars to be able to come in and come out because you're not reliant on the same people every week to get you to where you need to get to. And he cited Drew McIntyre returning on Monday, stating Drew was dying to come back. He wasn't hurt. He wasn't injured. We just thought, let's give him a little breather for a second. And whether that's spending time at home, enjoying your family, whatever that is, whether it's you have another project you want to work on, I have this project that Netflix has come up with, I'm going to work on that. Us having the ability to morph and shift things around and keep things fresh, I think is a tremendous opportunity for us. So I'd like for more of that as well. It's an interesting look at where you have seen, like, just looking up today, some of the like just match totals for this year. Like, as you can imagine, with a few exceptions, like everyone's match totals are down this year. And the leader is Cody. He had 93 matches this year. Maybe he hits 100 with the live events at the end of the month. But overall, we're talking about, and that's your most active performer. And I think for the creative side of things, like there is a value to, you can swap guys in and out. It allows for a refresh of your stories. You're not riding with a pat hand. And there's also, this is at a time when between WWE and AEW, like we are seeing way less in ring for these performers. And there's probably merits to that. And there's a downside to it as well. But it's definitely a trend that both companies have seemed to embrace pretty wholeheartedly. AEW from the onset and WWE in this era of really limiting its live event schedule.
Yeah, and so what I'm showing on the screen here is as of last year in 2023, they ran about 219 events, and so it's I imagine it's going to be a little lower for this year when the total comes in. I'm sure they're on track for lower. So it's not a relatively new thing, especially after the pandemic. They never got back to 300 events as they were at, throughout almost their entire history prior. And we have, when I've dug into the archives, I was able to find 848 events in 1987 when they were running, 3 shows simultaneously or something like that. But I mean, that is
fueled by cocaine as well.
Yes.
I mean, how these people got through these, the nights when they were literally running 3 to 4 crews a night and had none of it, at least in the last decade or so, you had tour schedules that made sense. I mean, in the 80s, you can look at it, these guys are crisscrossing the country in multiple time zones. It's a miracle some of these people even came out of that era.
And no joke, many of them didn't. I mean, go back and look at the cards of some of these house shows from the 80s, and a lot of these people are not alive anymore. Yeah. But I think it's reflective of this business being a live event business, especially in the 80s and into the 90s. And it's become less and less of a live event business as TV rights deals have gotten better and better. And you need to rely on live events less and less. And the live event becomes more about the media production and less about just doing the event. So it just becomes, wiser to do fewer events. And Mark Shapiro has really been pushing the idea that they don't need to do as many of these house shows in smaller markets because the profit margin isn't really there. So I think, sort of what the quote from Paul Levesque is getting at there is that I think it becomes more of like a voluntary territory system or a rotation system that I think is really important. And I think we've seen bear it out throughout even recent years in terms of, look at how hot Brock Lesnar was in the period where he would only show up once in a while. Roman Reigns, I think, has become a bigger star because he's seen less often. There's scarcity in having him
six
there.
matches this year. He's done.
And I would even go so far as to say, even look at Hulk Hogan, even in the prime of his career. It's not like he was wrestling on TV all the time.
You never got to see him on TV unless for the odd Saturday night's main event. But you had to pay either for a ticket or a pay-per-view to see a Hulk Hogan.
It's only in this post-Monday Night War era where it's become the regular thing and just assumed it's going to happen thing of having stars wrestle on TV every week or every other week. That just didn't happen in any other era before then. And we're seeing sort of a remedy or sort of a situation that's getting it back to that, I guess.
And I would say for the WWE product, and this is definitely amplified for a while for me watching it, but it really came into focus these last couple of weeks is as you're still getting it's fairly name versus name matches on all of your programming. It would be very hard to go back to a format of your enhancement talent, but it does still feel like you're getting the big match at the pay-per-view. That's where you will get your quote unquote like bell to bell content from a WWE perspective. But at the same time, for a lot of fans that are tuning in, like the big attraction of TV is not so much the big match, it's the big star segment and getting.
Because you seldom know what you're even going to see in advance, except for maybe the week before.
No, but I would argue that today it's like, even if you promoted like a big match a week in advance, it's like, what are we seeing that really means? It's like a big bloodline segment. It's Roman Reigns and CM Punk are going to sit down at a table on SmackDown, or open with a 25-minute talking segment at the beginning, and the live audience is buzzing about it. Like, it's stars in big segments having compelling story-driven segments, as opposed to like just the wrestling match that it is built around. And for a longevity standpoint, like, there's great positives. If you can put two stars out on television to talk for 20 minutes and we don't have the raw numbers, I'm sure that commercial-free 25 minutes did an incredible audience on Monday. So like, that bears it out.
Should have it later. Yeah. I think it's it's what makes it hard to compare and interpret today's wrestling business through the same templates of analyzing them that we always have, as far as like, well, who's drawing money, what main event is drawing money. That's what we try to look back into the 80s and 90s to see, like, this house show program really outdrew the other house show programs. It's really hard to make that comparison today, especially as live events become less important. And as you're saying, it's not even necessarily about the matches, right? Of course, it's about just, well, we were there to see the show, or we're there to see this compelling product that's got this really interesting bloodline thing, and I like the crowd interaction, and I like yelling yeet and acknowledge him, or whatever people are doing as I walk through the concourse and observe them doing. And it's less about the old way of interpreting and evaluating the business.